Welcome back. Just finished up with Representative Ista, who's always fun to talk to. Um, he's a little defensive. And understandably so, because I think it's a tough thing to be in. Because it's like I sometimes wondered if he was listening to what I was saying. Is he asking us to just stop being Democrats?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and maybe that's some wish casting on my part, where I wish I had people who were traditionally conservative and not in the Trump movement that I could vote for. And that's probably just not going to be liberal Democrats ever. And maybe that's just a problem that's particular to me. But I do think the branding issues, his sort of pushback on, it's wrong that the oil workers feel that Democrats are going to cost them their job. Well, I don't know that that's a good rebuttal. Like, if you're an oil worker and you look at some of the things that Obama administration officials or Biden administration officials said about oil and gas and concluded that they might be a risk, or at least more of a risk to your livelihood than Republicans would be, having a Democrat just say, well, you're just wrong about that, is not a good rebuttal to them. If they feel that way and they work in the industry, like, you're going to have to address that.
Yeah, because guess what? Perception becomes reality at a certain point, and you can argue that they should or shouldn't believe this as they do, but if they believe it, that's where you have to stand, and that's where you have to figure out how to pivot from there.
Yeah. So I think they're in a tough place. And I mean, they have it, and that's not news. North Dakota Democratic MPL candidates in a tough place. News at 11.
Yeah, yeah. last 15 years.
Right. Yeah, I mean, really 30. I mean, it's been a
Yeah,
while.
exactly at this
I think
stage.
the only person not named the last Democrat to not named Heidi Heitkamp to win a statewide election was Earl Pomeroy in
Yeah,
2000.
yeah,
Which 17 years ago now.
it's crazy
Uh,
because then he lost to it was Rick Berg in 2010
in
with
2010.
the whole Tea Party movement. Yep, and ever since then, it's just been
Oh,
complete.
trust me, Kyler, I remember. I was
You
there.
were there. Yeah.
I was there. So yeah, it's a really interesting debate, it's just, Democrat, they just got to find that issue. And I do think issues like, for instance, the disaster relief that I mentioned, at
Mhm.
the end, I think that's a really interesting issue. I had not realized that we had had such a delay. I mean, normally those disaster declarations are just
Containment. Yeah.
routine. A flood happens, a storm happens. The governor does a disaster declaration and requests federal intervention. The feds release some money. Everyone goes on with their lives. Is that the best way to handle that? I think you can make some arguments. Maybe states shouldn't be so reliant on the federal government. Some of those things. I'm willing to have that debate. But the way things are right now, it doesn't matter if you're North Dakota or California or Texas or whatever. Disaster happens, you put out a declaration and the federal government assists. And in the past, whether it's under President Biden or President Obama or President Bush or President Clinton or any of them, it hasn't been politicized and it hasn't been controversial. But under Donald Trump, not only is it taking a long time, according to the Associated Press, I mean, it's taking significantly longer than it did under previous administrations. But
You're
also,
going from you're going from something that typically takes at the absolute most maybe a week or two to now we've sitting on almost 2 months post the time of the emergency.
this is what the Associated Press said about it. They said, on average, it took less than 2 weeks for a governor's request for a major disaster declaration to be granted by presidents in the 1990s and early 2000s. That rose to about 3 weeks during the past decade under presidents from both major parties. It's taking more than a month on average so far during President Donald Trump's current term. And the request for the Enderlin, which those storms killed, was it 3 people? Enderlin, Spiritwood. Uh, we're at 51 days and count. Now, I had an error in my column when it first published. I had 81 days because I calculated stupidly from the day of the storm and not the day of Governor Armstrong's
Declaration.
declaration. So it was 51 days. Even so, well above the norm.
Yeah.
And there's a point at which you have to ask: is it because Trump expects people? He's such a transactional president. Do we have to give him something in
Well,
order for him to do his job? Do we have to praise him in some way?
And even if that is the case in this instance, I don't think I've seen a reason for our contingency or our delegation in Washington to have any reason for him to lash against them and try to deny them anything. I
No,
mean,
but I do think he's transactional, and I think it's a
I
situation
agree with that.
where he kind of expects, if you want to get something from him, he expects something in return, and that's not public service.
Yeah.
Um,
It's really disappointing to see that, especially in these disaster situations where it's something that shouldn't be about politics. And even for something like this to take 2 weeks feels like it's a long time, let alone now we're almost on 2 months. And the question is just why at this point?
it's the letter um that the delegation sent, because Governor Armstrong made for the most recent storms, he made a disaster declaration on September 2nd. So we have two pending.
Sure.
So September 2nd, and then the previous one was June 21st. And so to sort of following up on those disaster declarations, the delegation sent out a letter. And this is what they wrote. They said, while North Dakotans are extreme, just by way of illustrating how important this is.
Yeah.
But while North Dakotans are extremely resilient, the August 7th to 8th severe storm system, coupled with the previous June 20th to 21st derecho event. Am I pronouncing that right? Is it derecho?
Derecho,
Derecho?
Derecho, something like that. Yeah.
I never pronounce. I always read everything and I never listen to anything, so I don't pronounce things right sometimes. Anyway, they said the June 20 to 21st derecho event, that's what I'm going with, has compounded the need for federal recovery assistance in areas of our state. The size, scope, and combination of the June and August storms would entirely deplete any available state and local emergency funds, leaving nothing available for future disasters or emergency response operations during the 2025-2027 biennium. So essentially, they're saying these two events drained the money out of our emergency. Now, North Dakota has other reserves we could tap into if need be.
For sure.
But we're kind of looking at a situation where those funds are depleted. The legislature's not in session again until January of 2027. So, over a year until the legislature can get back in session and really do some stuff, because the federal government's doing what? What's the holdup? And I think if you're a Trump voter in North Dakota, I mean, those Enderlin, Spiritwood, those are rural areas. A lot of Trump voters out there. You got to be asking, is your president doing the job you elected him to do right now?
Yeah, that's a heavily conservative area in this state. And to see this complete lack of accountability for them, I guess I can't speak, I'm not there, but I would feel like it should feel like a slap in the face to them.
Yeah. So that's tough stuff. And then even the, if you could argue that, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I think it's just, it's very, very frustrating to watch. The politicization. I mean, even setting aside the delays, for the president of the United States to say, while LA is burning from wildfires, to say, hey, California, maybe if you change your laws, you'll get your disaster funding. Those are the games we want to play at the national level. So if we have a Democratic president one day, and the Democratic president say, hey, North Dakota, get rid of your voter ID law, and then we'll help you with flooding.
And see, that's the thing. That's where this could turn into, because you're setting a precedent. And like in your one article you put out, you're seeing so much of this back and forth between the parties, where just because this side did it, that gives us the credit or the precedent to do it now, doesn't mean that's what should be happening. But it just feels like that's what it's turning into.
I don't think there's a lot of Trump supporters right now who are contemplating what it means, like all this massive expansion of executive authority, deviation from the norms of sort of the way presidents comport themselves and make decisions. And all this, if the next president is a Democrat, are they going to do the same things? Only do them in ways that Republicans don't. I mean, you really kind of have to divorce it from, even if you really like Trump and you really hate Democrats and you like it when he's sticking it to Democrats and everything. One of the reasons why we support, like we write the laws down and we have the Constitution and we put these political leaders in boxes, we put boxes around the power that they can wield, is that they don't abuse it. And you can't support tearing down those boxes because the person in the box in the moment happens to be somebody you like.
Mhm. And you've seen the expansion of that box incrementally over the last 100, if not, 115 years since the turn of the 19th or the 20th century. And it's grown, slightly over time, but now in the last really 40 years, we've seen it expand even further. And it's taken on a whole different life and role of its own, where it's instead of being a triumvirate of power between the executive, judicial, and legislative branches, it's almost a one and then 1A and 1B underneath it, with the executive branch and then the legislative and the judicial branches kind of being an underneath section to it.
Yeah. So it has been a dramatic expansion of executive authority under Donald Trump. And I think Republicans are going to rue the day. I mean, we're going to have Democratic presidents again. We're going to have Democratic majorities in Congress again. Are they going to behave this way? And how are Republicans going to feel? I was even in the column I wrote responding to Senator Hoeven when he was praising, Donald Trump, for deploying the military in Washington, D.C. And I mean, as a conservative, as an American, I have some deep reservations about using the military domestically for like law enforcement and stuff. Yeah. Military is not law enforcement. He did it in Washington, D.C., which is a little bit special because it's a federal district.
You can make an argument enough for that one, but
he's talking about Chicago. He's talking about L.A. He's talking about doing it in some of these other places. And I'm thinking how Republicans would have reacted is if in the heights of the oil boom, when, we saw a lot of young male workers come into Western North Dakota. They had a lot of disposable income, and we saw a little bit of a crime wave. Yep. What if Barack Obama had decided that he was going to send the military into Watford City to restore order or something? Now, I would have opposed that. That wasn't necessary. We dealt with it. We handled it. But what if Barack Obama, who had an interest in sort of, he wasn't a real big fan of the oil industry.
Yep.
What if he made that move? How would then Governor John Hoeven have reacted? How would other Republicans in North Dakota have reacted to that? Well, they would have opposed it, and they would have been right to.
Yeah.
Why aren't they then opposing what Donald Trump is talking about?
Exactly. Like Hoeven would have ran for a Senate campaign on that back in the day.
Sure.
And now you have it where people are just allowing Trump to just walk over the situation, and it's just becoming. I hate the word hypocritical because it can come off extremely harsh, but it's starting to feel that way at this point.
It's hypocritical. You can be harsh. It is absolutely hypocritical. Because that's what it is. You cannot support it, but only when my people are in power. We have to support the frame of government and the limits on powers and the separation of powers that we want, and then enforce those things regardless of who's in power.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a separate issue for partisan, but it's become downstream from partisan politics, and it's killing us.
It's like they might be separate, but they've become linked at this point.
I wish Chad was here. Are you a baseball fan, Kyler?
I love baseball. I am a disappointed Twins fan, as always.
Another type of Twins fan, I wonder.
I don't not in the past 34 years.
That was harsh. That one was harsh. Speaking of the Yankee fan who wishes I wish the Twins every day.
The Yankees and Twins over the last 20 years, which is equated to about a full regular season, the Twins have won 40 games against the Yankees, and they're 120 losses.
Even when the Yankees are bad, we're playing some of the worst baseball I've ever seen. But when we're going to Minneapolis for the weekend, it's going to be good.
No, it's going to be a shelling.
Did you see that? The Philadelphia, I think they're calling her the Philadelphia Karen.
Oh yeah. They're from last weekend, I think.
I have some mixed feelings about it because on one hand, she acted like a jerk.
Yeah,
right. She was being a jerk, and I think that's really unfortunate. The guy. I mean, there's always a little bit of a scrum for those foul balls. The guy got it. He gave it to his kid, and she comes storming over and says, "Give me that ball. That was my ball. You took that away from me.
You took it out of my hands or something."
That was lame. I do worry though about the sort of public reaction to it that we're seeing, where it's I'm reading in some of the baseball forums and stuff that I follow, people are like, "Oh, good, destroy her life, make sure everybody knows her." It's because she acted like an a-hole for a little while at a game. I mean, none of us has ever done that, has ever, in the moment lost our cool a little bit and said some things we regret or did something you regret. That's never happened to any of us.
And a little, on the flip side of that, I this might be a hot take in and of itself a little bit, and I have never got the opportunity to catch a foul ball or a home run ball, but I've always thought it was a little interesting of a sequence to, like, if there's a little kid by you. I mean, obviously, if you're a grown ass man, what's the point here? But if you got a kid by you, it's like it's a forced feeling, or it's an expectation, excuse me, that ball's got to go to the kid. And I understand that it probably should. It just feels like it's a little
I
bit of
think
a
it depends on the context. If you catch it and you're kind of off on your own and no other kids went to it, I'd say keep the ball.
Yeah,
There's another kid that went there, you caught it, celebrate, have a little fun, give the ball to the kid. That's probably the best path. But there is like this expectation now. And I think we're all a little judgy. I think,
like, did she deserve to be made fun of because of how she acted? There's a fair chance. I think so.
deserve to have her life ruined,
No,
harassed, threatened, or some of the other things.
And be completely publicly blasted with all of her personal information and her job coming to light. That's the excessive part.
It's disproportionate.
Yeah, completely so in that regard.
And listen, everybody listening to this, if somebody followed you around with a camera all day, probably going to find some things that you've done or said that you regret.
Exactly.
I wonder how many of our nation's problems, our society's problems, Kyler, can be attributed to the fact that we just have too much flipping time on our hands.
Yeah. You're not wrong. We have the ability to, like, these things are at our fingertips. We can do so much with our phones and have so much information there, yet we choose to just compartmentalize it to such a degree where we're able to really expand on anything we want. And so often we take that expansion into such a random or misdirected place.
I think about describing, could you imagine like going back in time to like a 1920s era farmer and telling them, well, I spent the afternoon roasting some rando from Philly who was at a Phillies game, roasting her on Reddit because she didn't, she acted like a jerk about a foul ball, and then wondering like, why do you care?
Yeah.
Why do you care?
Why
do I care about?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was entertaining to watch, and she was a jerk, and I guess we're all kind of rubbernecking like that. But really, why do we care?
Yeah, and like there was the secondary follow-up angle where after she got done confronting the dad, she went down a couple rows and started yelling at some other fan. But again, you make the great point. Why do we even care? And this, I know you and Chad talked about the Sydney Sweeney Jeans situation a few weeks back prior to. Like, why are these the things that get people worked up and riled up and caring about when there's a lot bigger, more pressing issues that people should be worried about?
Because it's a lot more fun to talk about Sydney Sweeney than it is Social Security.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Right? I mean, it is. Like, it's more entertaining, and it's easier to talk about because you can kind of take, and it titillates something in us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to take a position and then advocate for that position to other people, and then social media has given us all
platform
for this. Where normally it's like you didn't get to do this unless you went down to sat at the corner of the bar down at the local watering hole, or argue with your neighbor about it over the back fence in between laps with your lawnmower.
It's come to the point where anybody can say anything and anybody could, in theory, hear it.
When I did talk radio, there was so much pressure to kind of like, well, I got to get callers.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to get, how am I going to respond? Well, I'll find some story like the Philadelphia Karen, and then you take a hot take, and then you get people calling in, and then that's the business model, right? I'm so glad.
That's your like measure of success in that industry. If you're able to have a constant waiting list of callers lined up, you're doing well.
All right.
And it's unfortunate that it sometimes takes those nonsensical headlines to be the driving force behind it.
I cannot tell you how happy I am to not have to do talk radio anymore.
4 hours a day of just trying to find something to yap about.
I did 3. Sometimes I would do 5. The person I was working for a while wasn't showing up to work a lot. He did the morning show. I did the early morning show, so I would do a 2-hour, like 6 to 8, and then at like 7:30, I'd get a text saying I need you to do my 3-hour show too. That's 5 hours of talk radio, Kyler. Nobody needs to listen to me for 5. I don't even like listening to myself for 5 hours.
You run out of things to talk about. You've got to recycle content by the end of that 5 hours.
It was terrible. Yeah, I hated it. But yeah, I mean, that's the world. Everything is a talk radio show now.
Exactly. But
I,
that's the beauty of podcasting. You're able to specialize it
I
and put it
yeah.
into something a better context.
And listen, I fall prey to it too. I find myself like getting invested in some stupid controversy that it impacts me not at all.
Yep.
You know what happens in the left field bleachers at a random Phillies game in
I'm
September
not even a Phillies fan.
doesn't matter to me. It doesn't touch my life at all.
But hey, there's a Twins link to that. Harrison Bader hit that home run,
That's
who
a
got
Yankee
traded to the Phillies by the Twins.
that's a Yankees link too, by the way.
Exactly.
Bader. I wish he could have hit home runs when he played for us. He was terrible with the bat. Great with the glove, not so good with the bat. I am trying though. That is something I'm really trying is to care. This sounds terrible, but to care less about things. That's my new philosophy. Care less.
Yep. Like there's so much, and again, this is a bigger point that we probably don't have time to get all the way into, but there's a difference between caring and trying to make a difference about something. Like you don't need to necessarily care about everything because there's so much that you just can't affect and you can't control. It is completely out of your purview and you're just reacting to it. And again, as reactionary and as in the moment, it seems like it's a necessary thing. In the grand scheme, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever, except maybe being a little cathartic to you.
All right, we're going to end things there. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can subscribe to us on all the social media things that we consistently advocate for you not to spend so much time on. What can we tell you? But please engage with our content on there. Plain Talk ND is our handle on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, X. You can also leave us a voicemail or text message, 701-587-3141. Coming up next week, next on Wednesday, we're going to have Cecily Werman on. She's the executive director of the North Dakota Newspaper Association, talking about, obviously there's no question the newspaper industry is facing challenges, but also there's some bright spots too. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because these, and also, by the way, some surprising polling numbers showing how many strong majorities of North Dakotans saying that a local newspaper is important, that supporting your local newspaper is important. We'll get into all that next week. Stay tuned for that. And Kyler, thank you so much for joining us. You can find his work at mydakotan.com. He does a podcast that does a variety of podcasts and live streams, mostly about Minot stuff, but they're worth
dabble into some state stuff, especially during the legislative period and the election.
You guys kind of remind me of me, like 24 years ago to the day.
Thank you, Rob. We appreciate that.
Although it's a lot easier for you because I was working with a dial-up modem.
Yeah, no,
and streaming. I had nothing. I had to write my prose in HTML code because I didn't even have. You
had to code it yourself,
like a WYSIWYG editor to do bolding and italics and links. I had to hard code
everything.
Back in the early days. So that's me, grumpy old man, saying you kids these days are a lot easier. I had to write my blog posts up hills both ways.
But we do. The technology has made it so accessible that I'm able to step in seamlessly. My co-host, Jonathan Starr, he is a tech whiz. He can hammer all that stuff home, and I get to just be this pretty face that, annoys everybody.
It has enabled a lot of people that we don't need to hear from very much. But Kyler and Jonathan Starr are not too. They're worth tuning into. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host, Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
Rob Port's swing voter. This is the headline from today's podcast.